economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, ahead of the presidential elections scheduled for the 7th of September, many candidates submitted their declarations of candidacy at the headquarters of the Independent National Authority for Election. Foreign Affairs Minister Ahmed Attaf, now taking part in the 45th session of the AU Executive Council in Accra, Ghana, has said that the African Union's membership in the G20 is strategic, but it is imperative to take advantage of it in serving the priorities of the continent in various fields. In a large number of countries and organizations, including the European Union, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and Turkey, have strongly condemned the Israeli Knesset's approval of a bill rejecting the establishment of a Palestinian state. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Salmani. We begin our daily newspaper today with the presidential elections scheduled for the 7th of September. In anticipation of this important event, many candidates yesterday submitted their declarations of candidacy at the headquarters of the Independent National Election Authority. Carrying their individual signature forms, the candidates went one by one to the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Authority, or ANI, where they were received by the president of this body, Mr. Mohamed Sharfi. Thus, the candidate, Abdelmajid Tebboune, presented his candidacy documents at the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Authority, thanking all parties, organizations and bodies that have supported his candidacy. In a statement to the press, Abdelmajid Tebboune expressed the hope that his candidacy for the presidential elections will be accepted by the ANI. For his part, the candidate Raouf Aib presented his candidacy, stressing in his statement to the national press that the forthcoming presidential elections are positive because they bring together all generations. The same candidate pointed out that the electoral program he will propose to the people is based on preserving the unity and integrity of the country and increasing the value of the national currency. The candidate Shabi Salim also submitted his candidacy file for the presidential elections scheduled for September 7th at the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Authority. As an independent candidate, Shabi pledged in case of victory to serve his country and the Algerian people. Other candidates also came to the ANI headquarters to present their files, such as the Secretary General of the Front of Socialist Forces, Youssef Aouchiche, who declared on this occasion that his party had decided to participate in the upcoming presidential elections and not to boycott them, being convinced of their importance, underlining that their ambitious program carrying hope and confidence was addressed to all groups and social categories. For his part, the Secretary General of the Algerian Grouping Party, Tariq Zardoud, submitted his candidacy, a candidacy which he declared was intended to contribute to the consolidation of the democratic process in our country and to the strengthening of national unity. The Secretary General of the Algerian Grouping Party explained that his program aims to find solutions capable of achieving development and meeting the aspirations of the people. The president of the Movement of the Society for Peace, Abdelali Hassani Sharif, presented his candidacy yesterday at the Palais des Nations in Algiers, headquarters of the Algerian Independent Electoral Authority. In a statement to the press after presenting his file, Hassani Sharif underlined the importance of the 7th of September elections, which are an opportunity to look to the future in the light of regional and international changes, stressing that as a party active on the political scene, the Movement of the Society for Peace has a duty to be present with its candidate and its program. We continue to talk about the candidates who deposited their candidacy files yesterday at the level of ANI. The case of the candidate Zubida Asul, who affirmed that her candidacy for the next presidential elections was an important decision to contribute to the development of the country, underlining that her electoral program covers several aspects and aims at developing the country, protecting the family, and achieving the progress in economic development. Abdel Hakim Hamadi, candidate for the Algerian presidential elections, presented his candidacy file last night, calling in the statement he delivered to the press for the development of all Algerian institutions, stressing that Algeria is the legacy of the martyrs of the glorious liberation revolution. The president of the Democratic Youth Front for Citizenship, Ahmed Gouraya, deposited his candidacy file at the headquarters of the Independent National Authority for Elections. After presenting his candidacy, Gouraya said that Algeria today needs all its children and its elite to continue the process of edification, stressing that the next election will be a success for all Algerians, men and women. Candidates continue to arrive at the headquarters before the midnight deadline, such as the Stability and Reform Group candidate Belqasem Sahli, who handed in his nomination papers in the afternoon. In a statement to the press, Sahli insisted on the need to work for the success of the upcoming elections and allow citizens to do their electoral duty since national sovereignty is at stake. Bouamrine Slimane went to the headquarters of the Independent National Authority for the elections and presented his candidature file for the presidential elections on the 7th of September next, confirming to the press his intention to take part in these elections. The candidate Zaida Narza presented her candidature file at the headquarters of the Independent National Authority, paying tribute on this occasion to the positions taken by Algerian women at various stages in the history of our country, in particular during the glorious liberation of Algeria. We also inform you that the candidate Kamel Habel yesterday submitted his candidacy documents, expressing his sincere desire to contribute to the construction of Algeria and calling on young people to imbibe national values. The candidate Hisham Baba Ahmed also presented his candidacy file at the headquarters of the Independent National Authority at the Palais des Nations in Algiers. In a statement to the press after presenting his candidacy, Baba Ahmed affirmed that his electoral program is aimed at all the Algerian society, in particular young people. Finally, the candidate Ammar Shakar presented his candidacy documents, underlining in a statement to the press the need to make the next presidential elections a step towards reinforcing the stability of the country, consolidating its institutions and creating an economic dynamic that generates employment. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The Independent National Election Authority has already begun processing the individual subscription forms submitted by the candidates. According to the organic law on the electoral system, the candidate must submit a list containing at least 600 individual signatures of elected members of the People's Assemblies spread over at least 29 provinces. For example, a list containing at least 50,000 individual signatures of voters registered on an electoral list. These signatures must also be collected in at least 29 provinces. The independent authority will rule on the validity of the candidatures for the presidency of the Republic by means of a duly reasonable decision within a maximum of 7 days from the date of submission of the candidature. The ANI shall then submit its decisions on the nominations to the Constitutional Court, together with the candidates' files, within a maximum of 24 hours from the date of the announcement of its decisions. The decision of the independent authority shall be notified immediately to the party concerned. In the event of rejection, the interested party may lodge an appeal with the Constitutional Court within 48 hours at the latest. The Constitutional Court validates by decision the final list of candidates for the election of the President of the Republic, including any appeals within 7 days at the least. Once their candidacy files have been validated, the candidates begin to present their electoral programs during the election campaign, which is declared open 23 days before Election Day and ends 3 days before the election. This is Radio Algeria International, the English service. More news. The Minister for Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, is taking part in the 45th session of the AU Executive Council, now being held in Accra, Ghana, for the second and last consecutive day. In today's speech on the clause relating to the African Union's participation in the G20, Mr. Attaf said that the African Union's membership in the G20 is strategic, stressing that it is imperative to take advantage of it in serving the priorities of the continent in various fields.
لعضوية دائمة في مجموعة العشرين مؤثرة يعتبر حقا مكسبا ثمينا واستراتيجيا بأتم معنى الكلمة. لكن الملاحظ هنا أننا اكتفينا طيلة الأشهر الماضية بالاحتفاء بهذا المكسب دون التعمق في التفكير حول كيفية توظيفه لخدمة أولويات وتطلعات قاراتنا في مختلف مجالات النمو والتنمية. صحيح أننا فصلنا فيما سبق في مسألة تمثيل الاتحاد الإفريقي في اجتماعات مجموعة العشرين بمختلف مستوياتها، لكن المشاركة ليست غاية بحد ذاتها. ومن هذا المنظور يعتقد هذا الوفد بأن هناك مسألتين أساسيتين تستحقان منا كل الاهتمام والعناية. المسألة الأولى هي مسألة إجرائية وتخص كيفية التحضير لاجتماعات مجموعة العشرين. أما المسألة الثانية فهي موضوعية وجوهرية بامتياز، وهي تخص تحديد الأهداف التي نتوخى تحقيقها عبر عضوية الاتحاد الإفريقي في مجموعة العشرين، وكيفية توظيف هذه العضوية للدفع بالأولويات ذات الطابع الاستراتيجي لقارتنا.
Let's just summarize what Mr. Attaf has just said right now. He said that our continent's permanent membership in the G20 is a valuable and strategic gain in every sense of the word. However, over the past months, we have been content to celebrate this gain without thinking deeply about how to utilize it to serve the priorities and aspirations of our continent in various fields of growth and development. While we have already discussed the issue of AU representation at G20 meetings at various levels, the participation is not an end in itself. From this perspective, this delegation believes that there are two key issues that deserve our full attention and care. The first is a procedural issue which concerns how to prepare for the G20 meetings. The second issue is a substantive one. It concerns the definition of the objectives that we seek to achieve through the AU's membership in the G20 and how to use this membership to advance the strategic priorities of our continent. That's what Mr. Attaf said. Yesterday, Mr. Attaf also has called for a new strategic vision of the partnership between the African Union and the various international players. In his speech on the clause relating to the report of the Permanent Representatives Committee, Ahmed Attaf stressed the need to give these partnerships a global strategic vision capable of preserving our dignity and sovereignty and defending our interests and priorities. More in this report by Said Bouazi.
Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf reaffirmed Algeria's support for the February 2023 draft defining the policy and strategic framework for partnerships, stressing the imperative to enshrine the EU as an essential party in all existing or future partnerships.
The current organization and framework of the network of partnerships established by the African Union with the outside world is detrimental to the credibility of our continental organization, especially as this network of partnerships has continued to expand in recent times without us as member states having any say. A true partnership must be based on the principles of sovereign equality, mutual respect, and common interests. Its objectives must be defined by mutual agreement.
Deploring the deadlock over the draft policy and strategic framework, Ahmed Attaf was keen to point out that this draft is intended to govern the partnerships established by the EU with the various international players. What is all the more regrettable, the minister added, is that this blockage is due to the desire of some to enshrine the policy of exclusion, or rather the exclusion of a founding member of our organization, by preventing its participation in the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD. Reaffirming Algeria's position, for which such logic has no place within the EU, he recalled that this organization was created to bring together and not to exclude, to unite and not to divide, and to unite the ranks of the states and peoples of Africa and not to divide them. Turning to financial and administrative issues, the Minister of Foreign Affairs affirmed the need to intensify collective efforts to ensure that the continental organization is self-financing on a sustainable basis from African resources, thereby guaranteeing the independence of its positions and the sovereignty of its decisions. To this end, he welcomed the establishment of a ceiling on member states' contributions of $200 million as a first step towards achieving this important objective.
On the sidelines of the opening session, Ahmed Attaf held bilateral meetings with his counterparts from the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, the Republic of Rwanda, Chad, Ghana, Tanzania, and South Sudan. As you followed in our top stories for today, the Jordanian Foreign Ministry has condemned the Zionist Knesset's approval for a draft resolution rejecting the establishment of a Palestinian state. The ministry affirmed in a statement that this step constitutes a new and serious violation of international law and a further challenge to the international community. For its part, Turkey has condemned the passing of a resolution in the Israeli parliament that rejects the establishment of a Palestinian state, calling it a sign that Israel disregards international law. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has strongly condemned the Israeli Knesset's approval of a bill rejecting the establishment of a Palestinian state, viewing it as a continuation of colonial occupation policies and ongoing violations of Palestinian rights in blatant defiance of international law and relevant UN resolutions. Saeed Bougazi has the details.
The Organization of Islamic Cooperation reaffirmed its steadfast support for the two-state solution and called on the international community to fulfill its responsibilities to end the Zionist occupation, achieve a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace in the region, and enable the Palestinian people to enjoy their legitimate national rights, including the right to return, self-determination, and the establishment of an independent sovereign state along the borders of June 4, 1967, with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. The organization also condemned the intrusion Thursday of the extremist minister in the Zionist occupation government, Itamar Ben-Gvir, into the courtyards of the blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque under the protection of occupation forces. It reiterated its condemnation of all Zionist occupation policies aimed at altering the geographic and demographic reality in occupied Al-Quds and its efforts to undermine the historical and legal status of the blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque. The organization stressed the shared responsibility to defend occupied Al-Quds and restore it to Palestinian sovereignty, as it constitutes an integral part of the Palestinian territory occupied in 1967 and the capital of the State of Palestine. The organization also reaffirmed its support for all efforts made by the State of Palestine to mobilize the international community's responsibility, including activating the mechanisms of international justice to hold the occupying power accountable for its war crimes and genocide, and to rectify the historical injustice that continues to be inflicted on the Palestinian people. The organization, on the other hand, strongly condemned the actions of the occupation authorities aimed at undermining the status and role of UNRWA by intensifying direct attacks on its facilities, targeting its employees, and impeding its activities in the occupied Palestinian territory, considering this an extension of the serious Zionist violations of the UN Charter and resolutions and the Convention on the Privileges and Immunities of the United Nations. The OIC reaffirmed its resolutions from successive summits and ministerial councils, urging continued collaboration with international actors to halt the ongoing Zionist military aggression against the Palestinian people throughout all Palestinian territories, particularly in the Gaza Strip. It also called on all countries that have not yet recognized the State of Palestine to do so and to support its right to full membership in the United Nations.
The European Union has deplored the resolution passed by the Knesset, Israel's parliament, opposing the establishment of a Palestinian state. Today, the International Court of Justice, the highest judicial body of the United Nations, is set to announce its advisory opinion on the legal consequences of the Zionist occupation of Palestinian territories since 1967. The United Kingdom announced today that it has restored funding for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, and pledged an additional approximately $27 million in new funds to the relief agency. The International Committee for the Red Cross has called for improved access for the delivery of humanitarian aid in Sudan, where millions are deprived of the basic necessities for survival. CrowdStrike is facing intense scrutiny after admitting a faulty software update had caused global chaos. Thousands of flights have been grounded, airports are in disarray, customers have been unable to access their banking or pay for goods using cards, patients unable to see doctors or have surgeries, and more. Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike has since admitted that the cause of the outage was a defect in the Windows software update, with its CEO George Kurtz advising that the company's engineers were working to resolve the issue and had found a fix. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International.
Hello and welcome to Discover Algeria, a weekly program in which we'll let you discover or know more about Algerian heritage. Today, the program is devoted to the Berber architecture, which is a vernacular one that goes from Morocco to the Egyptian border, from the Mediterranean to Niger. It has never been influenced by the Arab or Hispanic Moorish style, notably in the southern part of the country. The Berber architecture in Algeria is in the heart of this field, where Berbers lived in various regions and in different types of houses. In this program, we'll try to describe in general the different Berber or Amazigh architectures one can find in the various regions of Algeria. Among the most ancient places people lived in are the semi-troglodytes houses, which one can see in the eastern Ores region, for instance. They are dwelled most of the time in lime cliffs, easy to dig. They were efficient to protect its inhabitants from the various weather conditions and predators. Some of the semi-troglodytes are dwelled on the ground level and had attached shelters. Later on, in the Kabylie region, houses there were easily identified with their double-sloping roof covered with hollow roofing tiles. The same style is also present in the eastern city of Constantine. Let's note that similar houses exist in the French Provence region. In this kind of house, back to the pre-Roman era, there's a room, a barn or a stable, and a garret where people, domestic animals and stock were living together without any separation. The house has no window or tiny ones, and the only access is the door. This, by the way, reminds us the Algiers Medina architecture. Some say this is to keep privacy of the house's inhabitants, but others say that because the then inhabitants didn't have the means to build bigger doors. The Berber house can have 1 or 2 floors and either a flat terrace, such as that in the eastern Ouares region, around Ksours in western Algeria, the southern Zab and Janet, or a double-sloping terrace, like in the coastal towns of Cherchel and Tnis, or in the Durdura region in Kabylia. In these houses, not only the material used in the construction can vary from a region to another, but also the way rooms are built, around a courtyard, all together or separated. The materials used are stones with wooden structures, mud and clay. The type of wood, for example, depended on the location. Palm trees wood in the desert regions, olive, peach, lemon trees, as well as black locust tree inland and in the coastal regions. One can notice in all these construction types that the external walls are free of any apertures. This is widely in reaction to environmental constraints, as the heavy walls insulated the internal rooms, and the reduction of light was probably beneficial throughout most of the year to face up to hot summers and very chilly winters. The thickness of the walls also prevents from noise coming from the building rooms. The outside walls, made of stones, are either left visible or coated with a finish which color varies from a region to another. Most houses we've been describing are farmhouses, which have also various dependencies such as dressing rooms, stables and barns, and which are independent. This type has survived notably at the borders of the Sahara Desert in the Atlas region. In many regions, a number of these houses was protected by a very high wall used as a barrier. This developed in what is known as Qsour, which is the plural of Qsar, and which served to protect those living inside and their possessions. In regions where soil was poor grain value,